بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين صلوات ربي وسلامه عليه وعلى آله ومن والاه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. I welcome all of you again, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward each and every one of you that have attended consistently, and if you have not been attending consistently, being in and out of these durus, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for being persistent in seeking knowledge, no matter where it is. Today will be the final dars in the 7 that will be shaded under Allah's throne, for I will have both persons that end the hadith. There's two persons that I will actually cover today, because they both are in the same category. So I wanted to cover both today, and inshallah that will conclude the hadith of the 7 that will be shaded under Allah's throne on a day surely there is no shade but His own. And we'll dive right into the hadith. And the 6th category of the hadith is وَرَجُلْ تَصَدَّقَ بِصَدَقَةٍ فَأَخْفَاهَا حَتَّى لَا تَعْلَمُ شِمَالُهُ مَا تُنْفِقُ يَمِينُهُ. That is the 6th category. And the 7th, وَرَجُلْ ذَكَرَ اللَّهَ خَالِيًا فَفَاضَتْ عَيْنَاهُ. Okay. The 6th in English, a person who gives a charity and conceals it to such an extent that the left hand might not know what the right hand gives. And the 7th, and which is the last one, and a person who remembers Allah in solitude and his eyes well up. Now the reason why I wanted to cover these two together, because they both have to do with sincerity. They both have to do with being in, being alone in solitude, right? You giving charity where your left hand doesn't know what your right hand gives is the utmost secrecy in your giving. And when you are in, alone, and you remember Allah and you start tearing, it's because you are alone. It shows your sincerity. So that's the reason why I wanted to bring both of those together and give it as one dars instead of splitting it into two. Now we'll go into the first, which is giving sadaqah in such a way that your left hand doesn't know what your right hand gives. That's a quality that if you were to have, it gives you a sense of joy and happiness when you do give, because it really shows your sincerity in giving when you don't have any person seeing what you're doing, your actions. Normally, if you're a person that's afraid of riyah, showing off, because maybe your salawat, you have a beautiful voice in Quran, whatever it is, you're normally afraid of your actions. When you give sadaqah, it could also be problematic for you that you don't want to give as much because you don't want to show off in a a fundraising dinner. You don't want to put your hand up, oh mashallah, so and so gave this much on this day. You're almost hesitant. But when you're giving it in private, and really there's no one for you to show off to, because you're really just giving it in private, in such an extent, that even your left hand, it's a metaphor that your left hand doesn't know what your right hand gives. You may be logging on a non-profit organization website, and you're just giving a monthly donation to that website, and no one knows about it. That level of secrecy was embodied and was apparent in the Sahaba. We'll start with Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr was looking after an older lady, and he would go to her home and help this older lady with whatever she needed. He would cook for her, take care of her, clean after her, whatever it is. And he would do this after Fajr. And no one knew about this, right? And don't forget, there are many forms of charity. It doesn't have to be only, giving money. Helping is a form of charity. Finding someone, you're driving on the side of the road, and you're able to help them. You're helping them. That's another form of charity. It's not only limited to money, right? So Sayyidina Abu Bakr would always, you would find him after Fajr going to this older lady's house, and no one knew about this. And Sayyidina Umar, of course, and if you know the competition between Sayyidina Umar and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhuma, you would find that Sayyidina Umar wanted to know what Abu Bakr was up to after Fajr, because he would always find him that he would almost be escaping somewhere. So he followed him one day, and he found him to be doing this, going to this older lady's home and just adhering to her and helping her out. And that to me is why we take those Sahaba as our role models. Because even though they tried their best to keep their a'mal secret, Allah still at the end showed them to us for us to learn from them and to take them as our role models versus the role models of the so-called today. Now Umar has an interesting story as well. Umar used to take sacks of grain and barley and wheat and carry them on their shoulder. And if you know how big these massive sacks are, there could be up to 100 pounds, if not more, 150 pounds, right? A sack, and he'd carry him on his shoulder. And don't forget, he was an Amir al-Mu'mineen at that time. He had his servants, he had his Sahaba around him that will do anything for him. You are al-Amir, you're Amir al-Mu'mineen. Whatever you want it's just command it, we will do it. But he would insist to carry the sacks of barley and rice on his shoulder. And when he was asked by the Sahaba or his servants, let us carry it, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, on your behalf. And he said, get away from me. You will not carry my sins on the day of judgment. He's comparing him carrying those sacks of barley and rice to the sacks of maybe sins that a person might carry on the day of resurrection. It's almost like you're Sayyidina Umar. How can you even think like that? You have been promised Jannah. But that mindset is what got him to that level, that he's always never sure that he is doing enough, right? So he told his servants, no, let me carry those. You're not going to carry my sins on the day of judgment, right? And I'll give one more example, which was Zayn al-Abidin. Zayn al-Abidin was the grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the grandson of Ali radiyallahu anhu, the son of Al-Husayn. Every night he would gather sacks of barley and rice and wheat and distribute it to the fuqara, to the poor of the people in Medina. And when he passed away, they revealed, given him a shower, right? When you pass away, they were giving him a shower, they would see, marks of bruises and scabs and scars on his shoulder blades. And they asked his family, what was that from? And they informed them that he would at night come out and distribute sacks of barley and rice to all the poor of the poor people of Medina. And coincidentally, the next day, when they were going to bury him, roughly 100 families came out and complained that last night we didn't get no food, no water, nothing that night. Normally we are accustomed to receiving some type of food during those every night, and last night nothing came. And it was, only then did they realize that it was Zayn al-Abidin who was distributing these food, and it was only cut off when he passed away, radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. And inna sadaqata la tudfi'u ghadab ar-rabb. Surely, indeed, charity extinguishes the Lord's anger. Even though this is a weak hadith, a lot of ulama have sahahu, made it a hasan hadith. ولكن the ibra, or the meaning of it, is beautiful, that sadaqah truly extinguishes the Lord's anger. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is angry with you for have committed something against Him, and a sin against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that giving charity will extinguish this anger by Allah, right? So now that is the first category, or the first of two that I wanted to cover, which was you giving a charity in such a secret way that your left hand does not know what your right hand gives. And the last one, which I would cover in this hadith, which is you are making dhikr in solitude by yourself. You're not in front of people, in your own room at home, or maybe even in your car by yourself, and you remember Allah and you start crying. Now there are two rewards in this. The first one is that you're making dhikr, and the second is that you're crying. They're both could be on their own give you magnitude of reward. Just your dhikr and you're just crying from the reverence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would often cry at night in his qiyam. So much so that Aisha radiallahu anha would say that after the prayer was completed, it would be almost like the not a puddle, but underneath his prayer ground, it would be wet. Could you imagine how much you would have to cry for that area to be wet? I mean, you could cry for 5 minutes, maybe your shirt would start, getting wet, maybe your pants. But could you imagine how much you would have to cry for the area underneath you to start, becoming wet? And it could only mean that if the Prophet ﷺ is the greatest human to ever been created, he has been promised Jannah, the greatest of Al-Anbiya, and he is crying this much when he was asked, why do you do it? When he would stand up all night and his leg would swell up, he would say, أَفَلَا أَكُونُ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا, shouldn't I be a grateful servant? Right? And most of his du'as were for us. His care for us supersedes our care for ourselves. Let me repeat that. His care for us as part of his ummah, part of the ummah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his care for us that we make it to Jannah, achieve salvation, is far greater than we care for ourselves, to seek salvation for ourselves. And if you let that sink in, you would understand what I mean. That we truly don't, quote unquote, care as much as the Prophet cared for us. When we commit sins and when we slack off and we derail from the right path, that doesn't show and it doesn't indicate that we really care for our akhirah. Yet the Prophet ﷺ, from his dua, his insistence on teaching us and protecting us from hellfire and hopefully Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala admitting us into Jannah, is apparent from the ahadith, from ayat al-Quran, from the seerah of Sirat al-Nabi, that we see how much care he has for us. So his crying, part of his crying is so for us that he's constantly making dua for us. Ya Allah, protect my ummah, save them, protect them from all the fitan, right? And at the end he would say, Allahumma fashhad inni ballaghd, that I have delivered the message. That he wants to take this burden of delivering the message off his shoulder, that I have conveyed the message to my fullest ability, right? And there's an ayah in the Quran, going back to dhikr, أَلَا أُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِخَيْرِ أَعْمَالِكُمْ, shall I not inform you of the best of your actions, وَأَزْكَاهَا عِنْدَ مَلِيكِكُمْ, which are the purest to your Rabb, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَأَرْفَعَهَا فِي دَرَجَاتِكُمْ, which exalt you to the high ranks, وَخَيْرٍ لَكُمْ مِنْ إِنفَاقِ الذَّهَبِ وَالْفِضَّةِ, which are more effectuous than spending gold and silver in charity. وَخَيْرٌ لَكُمْ مِنْ أَنْ تَلْقَوْا عَدُوَّكُمْ فَتَضْرِبُوا أَعْنَاقَهُمْ وَيَضْرِبُوا أَعْنَاقَكُمْ, and better for you than you should encounter your enemies, whom you will smite their necks and they will smite your necks. قَالُوا بَلَى يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, they said, certainly, O Prophet of Allah. Dhikrullah, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of what I've mentioned in terms of the action of dhikr supersedes giving charity, dhahab wal fidda. Shall I not inform you of the best of your actions, which are the purest to your Rabb, which is pure to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which exalt you to the high ranks. All of these are superseded by dhikr. Dhikr could be a distinguisher, a farq between a person being a pure good Muslim and a hypocrite. If you have a problem with you're challenging yourself and you're always having this internal battle within you, that am I a hypocrite? Do I look and appear in front of people a certain way, and then in secrecy and private I am another way? If you want to have at least some type of, you could say, a scale or a measure that could help you distinguish yourself from a hypocrite, one is the ayah, وَلَا يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. Speaking about whom? Hypocrites. That they don't remember Allah but a little. Meaning, hypocrites remember Allah. They make dhikr, they make istighfar, they make tasbih, but just so often. Maybe a couple of times a day, maybe a couple of times a week. If you want to distinguish yourself, I don't want to say guarantee, but if you want to distinguish yourself and give yourself a rest of mind and peace just for yourself, that hopefully I am not a hypocrite, then indulge in dhikr. Don't let your tongue go dry without dhikr. Persist yourself on dhikr while you're driving. And the beautiful thing is, there's another ayah that shows how the ease of dhikr. Dhikr is so prevalent and it's so easy that it could be done while standing, while sitting, while laying down, as the ayah reveals, الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا, standing, وَقُعُودًا, sitting, وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ, and laying down. The ayah is indicating that it's so easy that it could be done in any form or any shape throughout your day. It's such an easy task that could elevate you in high ranks, and it's so simple and it's so easy, and it could be done without even moving your lips. One of the greatest tasbih that you could say is La ilaha illallah, and you could say it without even moving your lips, just by the mere movement of your tongue, without moving your lips. La ilaha illallah. No one could know that you're doing dhikr. It's such a secret way that you could really raise in ranks in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with such ease, that you could be doing it while walking, and while sitting, and while napping or laying down. It's such a powerful act that some of us may neglect on. And there's stories and tons of stories, those that parents that couldn't bear children and they just indulged and persisted on istighfar 1,000 times a day, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala eventually after 10 years have given them the rizq of having kids. Those that were poor became rich from the insistence on dhikr. Those that wanted to pass this class and wanted to seek this degree and find a job persisted and continued in dhikr. And there are tons of accurate stories out there that and you might have a story where you said, Ya Allah, if I commit myself to this much dhikr, please give me this and that, and it came to fruition. And even if it didn't come to fruition, then the plan of Allah was better than your plan. And so this ends the series of the 7 that will be shaded under Allah's throne. Now I want to mention one last thing about all 7 categories. They have one common denominator. Ibn al-Qayyim addresses this common denominator that all 7 have in common, which is they all have to do with fighting your own desires. All of these 7 that I have listed throughout all of the episodes have to do with one thing. That is that you are insisting on fighting your own desire. If we go back up and we run through every one of those 7, it has to do with fighting one's desire. Starting from the first, which is Imamun Adil. When you are a leader in a leading position, you have the authority and the power to execute at your will, but you restrain yourself and you want to execute injustice. Your desire might tell you to do this and that and execute in this way, but you are restraining your desire and you're executing in the rightful manner, in a justful way. The second, a youth who grew up with the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we discussed being in the youth age, you just want to run, you have this fire inside of you. Shab, it comes from the word shabba, from fire. The heat of the fire, that you just want to move, you want to do things, right? You want to be able to if you're a boy, you want to go out with girls. If you're a girl, you want to go out. There's so much things that you want to do, right? You have so much energy inside of you that you're taming it and you're controlling it. So you're controlling your desire. Number 3, a person whose heart is attached to the masjid, that you could be anywhere else. It's so much easier just to pray at home. It's so much more relaxing to not go to the masjid. But you're insisting to fight your desire and continue and persevere and to be resilient and continue your insistence on going to the masjid for salawat. right? You're fighting your desire. The fourth, which is two persons who love and meet each other for the sake of Allah and depart on that, meaning that you could have a problem with this person, right? But you love him for the sake of Allah and you continue to see him because you love him for the sake of Allah. You're fighting your desire. You're fighting your desire to befriend people that could take you astray, people that do haram things that you enjoy what they do. They do 1, 2, and 3. We don't have to go into detail, but you are insisting to fight your desire to chill with them, to befriend good people that will eventually lead you into Jannah. The fifth category, which is a man whom a beautiful, high-ranking woman seduces him for illicit relation, but he rejects their offer or her offer, and he says, "Inni akhaf Allah," I fear Allah. And this is self-explanatory. The temptation of the opposite gender. If you're a male, the female, and if you're a female, the male, that you are insisting to repel and to stay away from such an atrocious act of fornication or adultery or what have you. And you're insisting to fight that desire that's within you. And the sixth, which we cover today, a person who gives charity and conceals it, that his left hand does not know what his right hand gives, is the same way. That it's desirable that you stand up and you put your hand up and you say, I am giving this much and this and that. Or when you are giving in public. Not to say that giving in public is haram. No, it's actually also encouraged to give in public if you could encourage others, if you could be sure that your intention is in place. But in general, giving sometimes gives you a sense of it boosts your ego that you're able to give, right? But when you're able to give in secrecy, you are taming that ego and that desire to give in public, and you're controlling it, and you're telling yourself, no, I will give it in secrecy. So you're controlling your desire. And the last one, person who remembers Allah in solitude and his eyes well up, that is controlling your desire, that you tame yourself to and sit yourself down and force yourself to remember Allah to the point where you want to cry. It's okay. The ulama say, force yourself to cry. Sit. If you're a person that can't cry or doesn't cry, force yourself to tear. Force yourself to cry. Shed a tear in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept that from you. And with this, I will end the 7 that will be shaded under Allah's throne. Once again, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all of you for attending this series, even if it was for 1 minute. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala include you from those that will be said to them, قُومُوا مَغْفُورًا لَكُمْ, get up, you have been forgiven. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from us, and anything that I have said in this series that is good, it's from Allah alone, and anything that I've said which is not accurate or not good, it is from me and from shaitan. For us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me and forgive us all. Jazakumullahu khairan once again for attending, and keep on a lookout for another series inshallah in the next couple of weeks or months when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala permits. And Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.